Hey, it's Russ from Crafter, and today we're going to talk about content form controllers. All right, these are lifecycle events, script handlers that allow us to code things on the front end and on the back end when content is flowing through its various lifecycle events like create, update, delete, copy, paste, duplicate, things like that. So there are times where we want to, for example, take different fields that users enter, different values in the fields that they enter, and we want to synthesize those into a new value, and we want that to happen automatically. Or we want to tie two different fields together on the front end. And that's a great use of a content form controller on the front end. Other times on the back end, we want to validate some content, or we want to go out to a remote system and grab some data and put that, make that available to the content type, or make some decision whether the save is good or not. And so again, we can do that on the server side with a server side form controller. Okay. So just think, if I need something to happen when the user is interacting with content, and it's not a publishing activity, but it's somewhere before that in the lifecycle, it might be a good place for a form controller. Okay. Now let's take a look at what are we talking about when we say form. So if I click edit here on the home page, here I can see a content form. This is basically a form view of a content type definition, a set of a type with a set of properties, right? And these are all user definable properties. And this form view allows me to edit all those fields at once, right? So I can make changes here. I can also make the same type of changes through Experience Builder. So it's just another type of engine that's more visual than just a form. Now, if I want rules to take place when I'm working with content, making an edit, for example, I'm going to go to Project Tools, and I'm going to go to Content Types, and then we'll choose Entry, which is the type we're looking at here. And you can see here's our definition. It looks like a lot like the form that we were just looking at, but it's the data definition side of that. And then over on the right-hand side, you can see I have a controller, which we're going to come back to. That's the server-side controller. And then I have a config file, a config XML. And if I click on that, you can see here I've turned on a controller tag here and set that to true. And this actually relates to the client side controller. We actually use this tag to turn that on so that the form engine doesn't try to load something if that controller is not present. Now, behind the scenes of this screen here, this information is all stored as files in a Git repository, your Git repository in the project. So if I click on this here and then click on this window here, you can see this is my file view, my local instance here of these assets. In fact, this form definition is represented here, form definition.xml. The config file that we were just looking at is here. And then additionally, I have a preview image. And I also have a controller.groovy, which is a server-side controller, and then form controller.js, which is the client-side controller. Let's start with looking at that. So I'm going to open this up, and here you can see that I have a class. I'm going to extend that class, and you can see in this case, I'm going to work on before save. Now, there are other methods as well that work, like on load and so on. So I can do similar things, but here I'm going to take advantage of the on before save. And in this case, I'm going to get the value of the internal name. I'm going to check if that ends with a star or not. And if it doesn't, I'm going to add a star to that. Okay. And then I'm going to return true, saying go ahead, go forward with the save. So on save, the user is not going to notice anything, but it's going to take their internal name and add a star to it. That's the idea of this controller. Now, you could imagine you can make something much more interesting and useful for example, again, like taking two different fields, looking at their values, and then assigning a third field with a different value, or looking across 3 or 4 different fields and implementing a custom validation rule. And then if that validation rule fails, blocking the save. So that's a good use case on the client side for that. So let's see this in action. So you can see here, once I've made that method, then I'm going to declare that this module is loaded. This name is important here. It always maps to your, this part here specifically always maps to the name of your content type. Okay. And this part here maps to whatever you call your controller when you define it. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and see this in action. So it's enabled. So what I'm going to do is just click Edit. And you can see here's my internal name. Here they labeled it as file title, but it's just my internal name. And I can put something else here, like Russ was here. And that's just what the user enters. Now, when we click Save and Close, what happens is, if we look at up here, we can see that it's already changed it to Russ was here star. I can see that as well over here on the sidebar. So there's my star there. And if I click Edit, I'll see that the code added the star here as well. Now, the rule is that if the star already exists, don't add another one. So let's go ahead and click Save. And here we see it did not add an additional star. If my user goes in and clicks Edit, and they remove the star and replace it with an exclamation point, then we would expect it to add the star on the end, which it does. So that's an example of a client-side form controller. Let's look at the server side. Okay, so here, let's go back to Project Tools, and we'll go to Content Types, and then Entry. And this time, the editor gives me an easy way to get to the server-side controller. And here you can see that I have access to the current site, the path of the content, the user who's saving the content, the type, what the lifecycle operation is, for example, an edit or a create or a move and so on. And I have a couple of other things I can do here, like get access to beans and things like that. So let's just, again, do something very simple on the server. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, here we'll kind of commit a programming sin. We'll just use system.out. Okay, so we're going to print a line, and we're going to say server side content life cycle event. Let's make that one word there. And we're just going to print out what the event was. So here, what we'll do is we'll just take this operation and we'll just concatenate it here on the string, just keeping the code as simple as it could possibly be. Save and minimize there. Now, because we're going to push this to the console, I'm going to pull that up, and then I'm going to pull it onto the screen here. Okay, so we can see that we're tailing the logs. I'm going to move that for just a second. And let's go ahead and close the editor here and close the content type editor. And what we're going to do is we're going to save this content again. So we're going to edit. I'll make another change somewhere else, and we'll save that content. And then what we can see in our console is that there was a server-side content lifecycle event, and it was an update. All right, and again, I could use this then to, for example, inspect the values in the content, go out via an integration with a third-party system, validate that what's been added or what's been updated, and decide whether or not I want to make a change or invoke another step, or block the save, things like that. So I have scriptability of these lifecycle events. Now, this is in Crafter 4X, and this is how this works in Crafter 4X. Later this year, early next year, there's going to be a release of Crafter 5, and that will introduce a new way to do both server-side and client-side events. The form engine is completely moving to React, and so the client-side code will change just a little bit, and we have made the server-side code even better. So stand by for an update on that as well. Thanks, and happy crafting.